couch this morning. I have the privilege of chatting with the Marine Park Management Committee. This morning, I'm chatting with Mr. Allan Stewart, who is the chairman of that committee. I'm chatting also with Ms. Esther Tobias, who is the research officer at the Department of Marine Resources and Fisheries, and also a committee member. And finally, Mr. McCoon, who is the public relations and outreach officer for the Buku Reef Marine Park Management Committee. Good morning and welcome, guys.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Excellent. Now, this morning, and when I heard that I would be doing this interview, would have been, one of the very first time that I heard that this committee is back into play and back functioning. Mr. Stewart, tell us a bit about this committee, when it came into existence, and what is the role of this committee currently?
Excellent indeed. First of all, let me thank you for having us. I think it is important that we do this on behalf of the people of Tobago. This committee, on the 9th of July, the head of the Executive Council, the Honorable Fali Augustine, the executive approved this iteration of this committee to ensure that we bring some level of balance management with a scientific undertaking to ensure that we bring management to the Buku Reef Marine Park. So I'm very pleased to be here, to be able with my team to bring this level of information to the wider stakeholders and also the members of the public.
Excellent. And Mr. Stewart, what makes this committee different from, previous committees that were put in place previously to oversee the marine park in that Buku area?
What we have found is that there's a need for continuity. There's a need for us to bring some level of management to the extent where you use the resources that are available to you. Not state resources, one, and also the local resources, the collaboration between the users, the collaboration between persons who have an interest or an intent. So this committee is going a bit further to ensure that education is part of the process, the sharing of information, and to bring about what you call an aggressive approach to bringing harmonization and balance to this wonderful 7 square kilometers of ecosystem that we learned that in 1970, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago would have designated this area as a protected space. By 1973, they went a bit further where it was proclaimed, and therefore the act is available. It's important that all users, all intended users, we strike an equal balance as to law enforcement, safety, the use of the sales and the stamping out of illegal activities that is taking place within the park area. It is a threat in terms of the life. It's an ecosystem that protects us, our livelihoods, and therefore the sense of harmonization and balance from a scientific point of view become imperative. And I think what this committee brings to the table is to allow for that to happen in a very, very progressive way.
Understood. Mrs. Tobias, tell us a bit. There were committees before, as indicated. Were you able to tap into, some of the research and the findings that committee had from before, what they were doing, what they had accomplished, and just being able to build on that, or are you starting from scratch in a sense?
Well, I must say, first of all, a pleasant good morning to all the viewers. And I bring you greetings from the Secretary, the Administrator, and the staff of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment, and Sustainable Development. We are not starting from scratch. There have been work in the past by the Institute of Marine Affairs, which is key in terms of research done in the marine space locally and nationally. So The IMA, as they are called, they are here on the island conducting research in terms of the water quality, etc., not only in the Buku Reef Marine Park, but all around the island. And that is available for consideration in moving forward. And the work continues alongside the officers at the department.
Excellent. Mr. McCoon, tell us a bit about actual enforcement of marine park laws and restrictions, because we saw recently, I believe it was maybe a bit earlier this year, that there was some issues happening there, specifically with the reef tour operators. Did that trigger the formation of this committee?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ms. Felix. Pleasure to be here. What I would say is that even before the issues that occurred earlier this year, this committee, or at least the need for a structured approach to management of the Buku Reef Marine Park was needed. We have, as you said, had previous iterations of this committee, but in this instance, we want to focus a little more on not just enforcement, but bringing everyone up to speed with compliance. And compliance is very important in the sense that it not only lifts or raises the bar in terms of the enforcement of laws and rules and regulations, or a regulatory framework as it were, but it also assists the destination with our image and the way we present ourselves to visitors to the island, whether they may be our brothers and sisters from Trinidad, overseas. We have many people from different source markets, etc., that visit our island. And we want to be able to have a regulatory framework that is enforced, that is structured, and that delivers the type of service required for our destination to always be, seen as being,
up there with the great, the best of them.
Absolutely.
But there are rules that exist. Like one of them, I believe, is that the marine park should be closed at 5 p.m. or something like that. Tell us about that, because although these rules exist, there has been a culture that exists within the marine park that has been used to foster tourism, but also, it's a situation where there's one thing happening, but there's one thing in the legislation or in the regulations, I should say. How do we strike a balance between ensuring that we do please our tourists, we do make the best of the product, the natural product that Tobago has, and also being able to conserve and preserve what is there?
So as I said before, a large part of this committee's role and function and responsibilities would be to educate the public, because it starts with educating not just the public, but the stakeholders as well. So when we bring all of the stakeholders into the room, whether it may be co-opted members, it may be focus group sessions, we can bring each and every one of them up to speed on what is required of them, right? Again, finding a workable balance between the stakeholders and the users of the marine park, along with the regulatory framework and the legal structures. It is in fact a Ramsar site, which is a marine protected area. So there are certain do's and don'ts that we would like to have, brought to the attention of the public. And once that happens, we can, solicit the buy-in of the public. And then we begin to roll out all of those enforcement mechanisms. As you would have seen in the past months or so, Mr. Stewart can correct me. We had an operation called Reef Shield, where there was a crackdown on certain things, and our chairman, Mr. Stewart, will comment more.
Right, I was just about to ask about that, Mr. Stewart. We saw just a few weeks ago, actually, that the police did an operation over there at No Man's Land, where they went in and they cleaned up all the alcohol over there, or confiscated from most of those persons operating on that side. As I said, there's the rule and then there's the culture. How do we strike that balance? Because you have tours leaving at 5 p.m. to go out, and there's loud music in the marine park and alcohol being consumed out there. So is it that this committee has the power to recommend adjustments to existing regulations?
Certainly. Based on the mandate, the terms of reference as outlined in for the mandate of the committee itself, one of the things that we have to do, and we have started that process, is to look at a strategic planning process, which we look at immediately what needs to be done. So Operation Reef Shield is part of that 60-day initiative that one of the subcommittees on the law enforcement undertook. And that is continuing. That is going to progressively develop and try to align people with law and order. It's very much out there that there is a level of lawlessness. There is also the movement of utilizing the space, capitalizing on the space for illegal activities, narcotics, things like that, and also the use of alcohol in a way that is not supported by the law. For example, the Customs and Excise Act in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago speaks to the 5 levels of licensing process that is needed in order for the sales and the excise of alcohol to take place. And therefore, law enforcement making that task force tight enough that you can really police it, utilizing what is available to us in terms of technology, surveillance, and looking at the area and scrutinizing behaviors and allowing persons to comply with law and order. To me, that is a serious imperative. Go ahead.
No, you continue.
And apart from that, we also, as I indicated, we look at the strategy that we are going forward with the plan is to allow it to look at these medium-term policies as well, review the existing policy. Our business is to ensure of its implementation, and where there are gaps, to fill those gaps. What we have done is allow the stakeholders, people that have a stake. We look at the entrepreneurial activities. One of the things that as you do the study, you realize this is one of the most striving industry in our space, and therefore, but it's very fragile. And it's important, as Ms. Tobias-Clarke indicated, that these spaces, this ecosystem, we need to allow the users to understand the imperativeness as to how you treat with a space that is so sensitive. And therefore, the sales of food, there are standards set as to how one should solicit from the public, and the exchange of food and sale. Food safety becomes a very important thing. So we have been working along with the public health. They have been working along with the persons. On the 25th of July, we conducted an assessment of the area. We saw for ourselves what is taking place. We did a needs analysis to understand better how we can find a mutual understanding, and also how we can identify to better allow for these persons to strive. Otherwise, you're going to destroy the very thing that they are using for economic purposes and entrepreneurship. So striking that balance is imperative, and that is what the several committees are working towards. And I think our very presence here is an indication that we intend to reach out to the communities, reach out to the stakeholders, reach out to the nation, because you have a lot of visitors. Our objective is to allow the average Joe to understand exactly what this terrain is all about, and what you are enjoying, how sensitive it is, and how tender it is, and it needs to be protected for our children and grandchildren and the future to come.
Understood. We're going to take a quick break right here, and we'll be back as we continue much more on this conversation after this. See you soon. Morning and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago right here on Tobago Updates. Guys, this morning we have been chatting with members of the Marine Park Committee here in studio with us, and we have been talking about conservation, preservation, and regulations. Before we went off to the break, we were talking a bit about striking a balance between what is actually being done, what is being practiced, what are the best practices, what are the regulations that are in place, and how do we strike a balance between the tourists being able to enjoy the park, persons being able to benefit economically, but also maintaining the environmental friendliness of the area and conserving the wildlife. Mrs. Tobias-Clarke, tell us a bit about some of the environmental impact that we've seen happening with the way that the park is currently being run, and what are some of the goals that you would like to see achieved?
Well, first of all, I must say that the earth is our home. If it is, we manage our home adequately, it will sustain us. All right. So with that being said, the Buku Reef, Bonaccord Lagoon, or the Buku Reef Marine Park, as it's commonly called, it is the best example, as some environmentalists say, put it, the best example of a contiguous or an adjoining coral reef, seagrass bed, and mangrove system. And because of this unique combination, the area was offered a level of protection by way of Marine Protected Area designation in the 1970s. All right. And the Marine Protected Area is simply defined as a geographical location within the marine space that has been identified for long-term conservation. Right. So if it is, we really recognize the importance of the environment, and we recognize the level of protection that is being offered to this area. I believe that we will see great results, because this area also offers a lot of goods and services to us. The marine space offers us food. It offers us coastline protection. It offers us an area that we can relax. It has cultural value. It has religious value as well. Okay? And this area, in 2004, it was to be designated an environmentally sensitive area. And an environmentally sensitive area is an area which has unique attributes and which requires some special protection. All right, so this is still ongoing, the will to have it designated as an environmentally sensitive area.
So if it is designated or currently being considered to be so, or have been designated in the past but not necessarily enforced, where do we redirect persons to? If persons have now grown accustomed to being in that area, and tourists look forward to being there. Tobago has, a number of really beautiful sites that can be utilized. Is there an area that you are looking to redirect persons to have that, same level of enjoyment that they enjoy at the park?
Well, remember, this morning we are talking about balance,
Yeah.
right? So I don't think the idea is to restrict totally human engagement within the area, because, as I said, the earth is our home. We just need to have a level of management in terms of the level of use within the area. All right. So with the Marine Protected Area designation, by way of the Marine Areas Preservation and Enhancement Act of 1970, it gives a level of power to the minister with responsibility for the environment to issue written permission for persons wishing to alight into the area. The legislation also speaks to not removing or putting anything within the marine protected area without permission. So again, it's a level of protection. It's not direct or absolute restriction at this point.
All right.
Right?
Mr. Stewart, tell us a bit about that, because, we've seen persons go over to no man's land, start erecting structures and selling food and all sorts of different crafts and different things like that. If this is a marine protected site or a sensitive area, and as you indicated, there should be permissions given before anyone goes and erects any structures there. What are we doing to enforce that legislation?
The enforcement has begun. And the process require one, engagement, inclusiveness, and also collaboration between the stakeholders. We have made the stakeholders part of a committee. Those that are not regulated, for example, the persons that trade on the park, it's at the no man's land. It's an unregulated group of persons, and therefore we have encouraged them to form themselves into an association so that probably we can speak to one voice that or we can hear from one voice that represent all of them. If not, we have decided based on our outreach campaigns to allow for us to be able to interact with these persons so that we could align them and bring them in alignment with what the law, what is unlawful. We need to identify those things because there is a sense of ignorance. And I'll go into some pieces so that the general public could understand exactly. For example, starting with touts, the way in which they behave. It's very disgusting in terms of how the public respond to it and what the public is experiencing with that unregulated ticketing system that exists. Then you have the possibility of the boats being overloaded. Overcrowding becomes an issue, and it requires safety measures to be in place to mitigate against any incident occurring. And if there is to be an incident, it must be coordinated well, it must be response well, they must be in preparation. So the owners of vessels must have the necessary documentation in terms of insurance to cover the passengers on their vessels. They must know the size. The public also needs to know. So these actions and these conversations and our publication will allow the general public to know exactly when you go onto a vessel if it is compliant. For example, the information that we have coming out from the maritime services in terms of the registration of these vessels. There are no designated party boats in Tobago. The public needs to know that you're putting yourself at risk. And therefore, it was important for us to bring these so-called party boats operators to bring that to their understanding and to facilitate the process of them getting themselves properly aligned with the law. Then you have also the use of jet skis. Some of the persons who are peddling these jet skis, meaning therefore for cash or renting them, they are underage. There are issues in regards to the use of jet skis and also that they need permission to enter into a marine park area. And also they need to understand the dangers. For example, you are snorkeling and a jet skis, you just come up with some and a jet skis passing over your head. The other thing you have marine species that require turtles coming up for air, things like that. Noise levels need to be modulated, squelched to a particular angle where you bring a level of management to the whole ecosystem. And that is the task of this committee. This is exactly what is going to be done. The committee have a life of a year, and therefore, as I said before, we are not starting from the beginning. We are examining closely what has been done before, identify the gaps, and ramp it up in terms of speed, because this is a situation that requires urgent address, and that is exactly what we are doing.
And so to facilitate buy-in from stakeholders, is any particular stakeholder from the marine park actually on this committee?
Probably I could share with you the public the construct of the committee. So apart from being the chairperson, we have the deputy chairperson from the maritime services, Mr. Ricardo Alfred. You also have representation from the Division of Tourism and Culture. You also have representation from the Division of Public Health. the Division of Wellness, Health and Wellness and Social Protection, Land Management. You also have the Department of Marine Affairs. Then you have from the Wildlife Group. You also have stakeholders who form a very healthy part of this. So the reef tour operators and the association, the Dives Association, they are part of the Jet Skis Association, the Pigeon Point Heritage Park, the Tobago Tourism Agency is also a part of this. So what we are ideally doing is bringing all of the stakeholder and have stakeholder engagement, their involvement, their inclusiveness in all of the process. And more or less the Ministry of National Security, they are playing a role. When we reach out to them, they said, Mr. Stewart, we were just waiting on you. We don't want to create a clash between the Tobago House of Assembly and law enforcement. And they immediately, upon 2 meetings, they were able to put together Operation Reef Shield, and that is continuing, where they have immediately brought about a change where they are trying to ensure that there is alignment to the law and that the lawlessness that is taking place, that we bring it to a quick end.
I'm sure Tobagonians are very happy to hear that. Mr. McCoon, tell us about some of the responses that you have been getting from some of the reef tour operators and the persons who have moved over into no man's land and started plying their trade over there.
What we have found is that the vast majority of stakeholders want to see improvement and want to be compliant. There is a handful or a minority group that may, push back, and you will get that. Like everything else in life, nothing is perfect. Nothing will always be smooth. There will be gaps. There will be challenges. And we have had 1 or 2 stakeholders in the space that have expressed concerns. And our objective is to bring them into the room, listen to them, and explain to them the value of getting into compliance and adhering to the regulatory framework. We don't want the protective services and the defense force, etc., and these operations to go and shake and rough up people. That is not ideally the aim and objective. However, a firm hand in some cases sends a message, which has been done with Operation Reef Shield, as Mr. Stewart said. And from that, we are now seeing little by little people becoming more and more willing to become compliant. And what I would also like to say is that the concept and the idea of a sensitive environmental area, a sensitive environment, particularly a marine space, is not alien or foreign to the Caribbean as a region. We have St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they have several marine parks with designations, protection, regulatory framework. So we can glean a lot from our CARICOM brothers and sisters and our regional neighbors and counterparts from the lessons learned, the gaps identified, how they treated with stakeholder confrontation, challenges, etc. And we can actually implement some of those methodologies into how we do things here in Tobago, because ideally what we want to do is set a standard that is not just for us here, but that is on par with international best practices and standards. Because at the end of the day, again, having a designated protected area is not alien to us here in Tobago. We have the Main Ridge Forest Reserve, which is the oldest protected green space in the Western Hemisphere. And we have understood and appreciated the value of that since Moses walked the earth. So it's no different with the marine park. There will be some teething issues in the initial stages, but we will get there, and we are confident and positive in that regard.
Excellent. Mrs. Tobias-Clarke, as he indicated, we have the Main Ridge Forest that is also a protected area. You don't see people just mounting a structure in the forest and saying, okay, well, we sell drinks here when people come by. So, what is the difference in the culture that has been created down at the marine park? And secondly, have you tapped into some of those international organizations who specialize in marine conservation? We know that, one of the SDGs is life underwater.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that collaboration happening to ensure that Tobago can benefit from those resources, because we know we have limited financial capabilities to do the things that we want to do. So in terms of tapping into those international grants and institutions, tell us a bit about that.
Well, I believe it might be an issue of access, because for the Bucca Reef Marine Park, it's easily accessible in terms of the depth of the water. It's easy to use. It's an area that all can use, from young to old, as opposed to an area such as the Speyside Reef, right? So I believe Bucca's problem might be an issue of access. Persons find it easily accessible. And as mentioned before, there are several access points to the Bucca Reef Marine Park. You have the Store Bay Beach area, Pigeon Point, Gibson Jetty, and the Bucca. All right. In terms of international access, Trinidad and Tobago is signatory to a number of conventions and are benefiting from a number of financial establishments. Okay, so I believe that we have the eyes of the international arena, and we are bound by certain regulations as well. So we need to meet those regulations in order to stand as one of those who are compliant with within the marine space. The other question that you asked in terms of going forward, I believe in going forward, there are many opportunities that we can buy into, and we are able to move forward with a level head in recognition of other, as Sean said, there are other places that are have their marine park areas, not just as a paper park. And I think we need to move up to that level where we can have Trinidad and Tobago recognized as a people who are law-abiding, who, you smile, as a people who are law-abiding and who have the environment as, as something important. Because as I said before, the environment is our home. This is one chance we have at it. We want for our children, grandchildren, and those who come behind us to sort of enjoy the things that we have enjoyed, right? So in moving forward, I believe that there are opportunities for us to tap into financial resources internationally and regionally, as well as to remember that the marine space is one space, and whatever affects Trinidad and Tobago might affect another area. Right? So we need to be our brother's keeper.
Understood. And Mr. Stewart, she spoke to the fact that it has a lot to do with our children and our great-great-grandchildren, the next generation being able to benefit from the beauty of what currently exists. It would be, we say, a crying shame that if they go out there, that there's no more of what we have today when that time comes. And you did indicate that an intricate part of what this committee has to do is to educate the public. Tell us about some of what is happening to go about educating persons, specifically young persons, the kids, getting them to understand so that the next generation understands the importance of conservation.
Communication concepts are very, very important to how you transfer. I remember a gentleman said to teach is the course to learn. And our messaging is very specific. The target groups are well aligned. For example, this initiative is just one of many. And therefore, as we move further, Sean will explain exactly the whole kit in terms of how we are going to roll it out going forward. But the transfer of knowledge is very, very important. Package it in a particular way that it could be consumed very easily, fast, on the go. We know that the theories as it relates to ecosystems, it's not a very sexy subject. It is one that is loaded with acronyms and also explanations that sometimes You wonder if you're in a university when it's communicated. And our business is to break it down, to have this type of conversation, to have simple things like signage, where the person who is going to the reef, the person who is going to Gibson jetty must be able to see a sign that speaks to, yes, you are entering into a restricted area. That's one. Tells you exactly what are the do's and the don'ts. When you board a vessel, you have a sense of what the captains need to have for your safety out there. When you go to no man's land, you ought to know that there's signage that speaks about sanitation and how the area needs to be kept. Discussions going forward is important in terms of our intent. Our intent is very deliberate to bring around effective change in a quick period. As I said, this thing is divided into three major sectors. What you do immediately, what you do in medium term, and what you do long term. There is even the challenge that the Tobago Houses of Assembly currently holds with the bill. Up to yesterday at one of our general meetings, we were advised by, that we need to attend to it so that what is happening before the parliament, before as it moves forward, where you have that marine bill that is going to be presented, that our stake, the Tobago stakeholders, are not forgotten in the leaves of those of a volume of pages. So it's important to get the public on our side, and that is exactly, as I said, it's very deliberate what we are doing, and therefore we will reap success. There is a possibility, based on what is happening, that we will have to engage some people on a one-on-one. There is the understanding that our vessels need to be licensed in a particular manner. There is the possibility, and definitely, that these boats have to have certain requirements to carry out their trade. Up to yesterday, I made the point, and I should say it here, that to travel to the reef and to travel to Trinidad is just as equal in terms of cost. It's a lucrative industry that needs to be protected. It's one of the real industries in Tobago. And therefore, with that understanding, it requires careful implementation and also very aggressive actions to curb what is taking place in terms of the lawlessness. That is something that the armed forces, the people that are involved in the law and compliance, they are ready, and they will continue to allow people to comply. If you have to, the sales of alcohol cannot be done in the manner in which it is done. We cannot allow for children to be exposed to that level of indecency as it relates to the peddling of drugs and things like that, that they need to know that the area is monitored. And therefore, the ecosystem in terms of the infrastructure, especially in no man's land, we have to be careful. You're seeing where it's becoming overcrowded with booths that are not properly designed, not compliant to any type of order. And therefore, while I learned that the policy of the THA is to allow for structures, our business in the committee is also to advise scientifically the Tobago House of Assembly, so that the division, when it pilots its messaging, it will be readily acceptable and stand international scrutiny in terms of how these, if there is going to be infrastructure, what is the infrastructure? Should it be environmentally sensitive? Should it be compliant to international standards? If you're dealing with waste, how do you manage waste? We had some very interesting input from the division with the public health responsibilities, and they were able to outline, instead of the hard hand or the heavy hand approach, they prefer to educate these persons as to how they need to trade, especially with food. And what do you do with the waste? with an understanding of the ecosystem, you will have individual responsibility with proper education going forward. And we hope that it takes root, and we, the committee, I really appreciate the efforts being made. And we give our full support behind Secretary Panton and what they are trying to achieve. And therefore, with their lead and the support, we will see in a very short period that this scourge of indecency and lawlessness be brought under control by a sustained effort.
Excellent. Well, we want to thank you guys so much for coming this morning and representing the Marine Park Management Committee. And thank you as well for all the work that you continue to do, specifically as it pertains to raising education and awareness on the island. But unfortunately, this is where we end the show this morning. There's so much more that we could have touched on and talk about. But what's important is that we understand that there is currently a group of individuals who are coming together to get the job done. So for the persons who are concerned about the management of the marine park, and if things are getting out of hand out there, and who is doing what and when, this committee has been put in place to really help with regulating as well as having that Tobago input on the Marine Act. Right. And so, guys, we want to thank you again for being a part of this morning's discussions. Thank you for your likes, your shares, and your comments, and all that you have been doing and continue to do to make Tobago Updates the #1 broadcaster here on the island of Tobago. Again, I am Shenell Felix, and have a great day.